So we'll talk about how a clock case is made. I'll just go back to tell you about the clock plates. The English cast those plates, those two flat plates, they cast them, okay? And when you cast something, it's not really hardened. And I just wanted to make a mention of when the clockmakers are cleaning clock movements, how degraded they can be. In the 18th century, you would have had your apprentice hammer clock gears. So when you hammer, you work hard. It's the only way you can't harden brass you can't temper it, you can't harden it by heat, but you can harden it by pounding it. But the problem is, it's very hard, but it's very fragile. So when you put this in the ammoniated cleaners that a lot of these clockmakers are doing today, the wheels, teeth will fall off, there'll be splits and cracks, maybe not right away, but the fissures have started, and the bell hitting, the gears grinding every day, it could only be a matter of years. So you want to stress to you all that you're having your clocks done, you make sure that your person is not using ammoniated cleaners. So back to the clock case. Clock cases are not made with traditional jointery. The only piece of jointery that are traditional on the clock case is the tympanic, and that's right here on the side. So it's the return of the facade, upper facade. That's the only place that you have a traditional dovetail joint. As far as a traditional mortise and tenon joint, everybody knows what a dovetail joint is, I would assume. As far as a traditional mortise and tenon joint, which in this area here holds, this is a panel. This is a square frame that encompasses the panel. Okay? So there's mortise and tenons in here. So that's the mortise and tenon joint that's hidden in there. Okay? Traditional on long case clocks. So the bottom facade and the central facade are done in this way. And then they're pegged with wooden pegs, as you can see. Okay? This is in curled maple with walnut pegs in this case. And you can see I have on the table a glue pot. These were all in the period put together with hide glue. So we're killing animals to eat. We're killing fish. So we have a special fish glue that can be made with a collagen that's just under the skin. You just have to be careful not to heat it up too much, or it'll break down the protein. So the protein is the real binder here that holds everything together. Okay. So traditionally, there's no nails on a clock case, only from the back. The back is nailed into the three pieces. So essentially, the clock is made up of boxes, in my mind. When we're building clocks, we have the base. You build the base box. You have a frame at the bottom, and you have sides. You build the midsection. You literally take the midsection and you slide it into the base with about 4 or 5 inches to go, and this beautiful crown molding holds it. It holds it vertically, holds it sideways. A lot of the Reading clocks here don't have this column treatment. It's called a quarter column. So you would have found this in Philadelphia. This is a copy of a Chester County clock. So this was a real upgrade. This could have doubled the price of the clock right here. So in my studio back in the 90s, this was our additional upgrade of doing a carved vine column. Okay? So this would be placed in the corner, and this is a direct copy because this was offered in the Chester County cabinet shop in the period. This option of a vine column. So we start with the bottom, we go to the base. The next movement, the next process is we make the feet. The feet are cut with a fret saw or bandsaw. These are called bracket OG feet. Okay? And you make them in sets. All of the moldings would have been done by a molding plane. And let's see if we can fast forward here. So we'll jump ahead a little bit, but you can see that there are tenons on the bottom of the side, the clock hood side, that go into the base. Walnut, cherry were the premier woods for rye, oyster, rose. And this area was prolific. A squirrel could start at Maine, Bangor, Maine, and go to Florida, never touch the ground. That's how prolific our forest. Can you imagine how they raped our forest here? How much lumber? I mean, I can't imagine people going out in the 18th century and cutting a whole field down to plant stuff. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. So third quarter of the 18th century, they actually saw a shortage. They thought it was too much work. It was actually cheaper to buy veneer. And by the third quarter of the 18th century, they developed some machines to cut veneer so they could put poplar, pine cases, and then veneer them. And it was cheaper to get it downgrade. Again, hand planing. So all the moldings on this can be done with a hand plane. They can be done modernly with a router, with a shaper, but they can be done with a hand plane. And we have a hand plane here. I'm sure everybody sees a hand plane. And the hand planes today are very valuable because they match historical profiles from London or from England in general, and France, and from the colonies here. They would typically make a copy of the molding in, say, beechwood or boxwood, if found. And the boxwood was very durable and would take a long time to wear. And they would inset it into a cheaper wood plane oak. And you could always replace this. You have your cutter made, everything's made, you wore the sole out, you can put a new sole back in. Here's a friend, he likes hand plates. He's deceased now, but what a collection. It was difficult to find brushes in the period, so finishes were applied with a pad. The French called it tampon, the Spanish called it muñeca. So, it's this pad application of finish. It's quick, there's no bristles because brushes were difficult to make, brushes would fall apart. So you would pad this whole thing with shellac in the period. And if everyone doesn't know what shellac is, it is the exoskeleton and excrement of the lac bug, only from India. It's the only place you can find shellac in the world. They can't manufacture for some reason. That's it. So since the 18th century, people go down and there's one shrub that this bug goes. He attaches to it, he secretes this stuff, creates his own home, lives in it, dies in it. The next one comes along and encapsulates him and his body parts into it, and it goes on and on and on. So shellac is very limited. And when you go to the hardware store for Zinza shellac, it's not shellac, okay? But what they do is they take this product and it's crazy because it only solubilizes in alcohol, so that's why we have the grain alcohol here. It's 100% alcohol. And it will take these flakes and make them into a liquid. And you can let the stuff dry up and you can rehydrate it. The beauty with the shellac finish is that you can come back and all these clocks, what's happening with all the clocks here, I did a tour. I introduced myself to all the clocks before the speech here. And all the clocks have shellac finishes, which is a good thing. We want them to have a shellac finish, otherwise somebody has done something they shouldn't do. So they're oxidizing before our eyes. And I like when I go to one of these antique shows, the upper end shows, and they're trying to tell the potential client it has an original finish. I mean, these people were born yesterday, really. It has a 50-year shelf life. If this clock was made in 1710, it doesn't have an original finish. And then it became an old finish. That's the terminology now. It's a dry finish. So, but the problem is that you need to maintain the finish on these clocks in every collection, wherever they may be, because what's happening is it keeps the ambient air with moisture off the wood and off the veneer, off the inlay. So the shellac serves multi-purposes of enhancing the wood by making it look wet, protection, but it keeps that ambient air flow out. And remember, back in the 18th century, when these clocks in the museum were in homes, You didn't have this up and down, let's, honey, turn the heat on, and the heat comes on, and it's blowing across the room, and the panel starts shrinking and cracking. I mean, these guys are pretty durable. I mean, wood is such a durable item. So we're back to our clock. We're on the hood. These are called windows. The windows were put there twofold, to see the movement, but to hear the bell better, because you have all this mass of wood around you. This is called the tympanum. You get a molding supply of tympanum, or the gooseneck tympanum, and moldings get applied on there. So, we know Ryan had a lot of wood to his hands. He could find wood wherever he needed to immediately. And the thing we must realize is that they were making clock cases out of green wood. They weren't saying, well, let's cut it and let it dry for 5 years like it should be naturally. They built the clock. And it's amazingly enough, these things are in one piece. And because of that, a lot of the jointery holds places together where the clock would normally go haywire as it dried out. So the clock is held in checks and balances all the time. Here in Reading, coffin makers produced the lowest end kind of clock. It looked like a chimney. It was made out of 6 boards. So you were on the low end of the spectrum. The real low end of the spectrum, they just threw you in the field. The second up was the coffin maker. So actually, Ryan would buy, Rose, Ryan, all the makers would have these coffin clocks, on hand. And typically, he would have 3 or 4 varieties in their shops, each of them in their shops. And you'd walk in and say, okay, I think I want that case. And they say, well, walk down and see Mr. Jones. He's got the clock dials, and another guy has the hands. So it was the same way as here in Philadelphia on a much smaller scale. Furniture makers produced clock cases only for the very high end, even here in Reading. There was only 2 in the 18th century that I could find producing cases here. And it's going to involve inlay, as we saw on the clock very early on, or a little bit of carving, perhaps a carved flaming finial. So these little add-ons. This is a finial that this clock will get. It seems a bit bulbous, but this is what was produced in Chester County in the 18th century when I copied it. So not the easiest thing with the symmetry to carve, if you've never carved one before, but and this is what goes in the middle of this clock. This is called a cartouche. This is a Philadelphia peanut cartouche. So